Hello again, and in this video I'm going to look at setting the failsafe for turbines or jet engines. It's a bit different, or it has options to be a bit different to the normal sort of failsafe settings because the ECU can interpret the signal that it gets. Depending on your own preference and the rules laid down by your model flying airfield or the event organizer, you may set the failsafe on the throttle to idle, or you may set the failsafe on the throttle to actually shut the engine down. And this is the point where if you set it to shut the engine down, you could simply set it to failsafe to the position where your radio would be at the normal shutdown. You know, at the end of a flight, you pull the trim back, shuts the engine down, fine. You could set it to that if you want. But many ECUs allow you to set a signal, sort of much further back on the throttle, if you like, and use that as the failsafe so that it records that event as being a failsafe. The idea being that you fly around in flight and your engine suddenly stops. Hopefully you make it back to the runway and you're scratching your head thinking, why did my engine stop? Let's have a look at the ECU. And if the radio had gone into failsafe, and you had programmed it simply to go to the normal shutdown position, the ECU would simply say shutdown, and you wouldn't, user commanded shutdown, and you wouldn't be much the wiser. But if you'd set it to come way much further back, as it were, on the throttle settings, the ECU would report this as being a failsafe event, and so you at least know that the engine stopped because the radio jumped into failsafe for whatever reason. So you're not going to go off trying to find out, was there a bubble in the fuel line, or is there a faulty temperature sensor or something like that. So let's have a look at how we can do all that in Jeti. So we're going to go into our model, into Device Explorer, and into the receiver, because that is where all the failsafing is done. Go into failsafe. It's got to be enabled, of course. Jeti tends to default the failsafe delay to 1.5 seconds. You can set it to your preference. My preference is for a much quicker one. I like it to be half a second, for the simple reason that 1.5 seconds at jet speeds, or the energy of them, or 1.5 seconds of a model with an electric motor, carving through the pits at high power setting and not stopping, 1.5 seconds can feel a very, very long time. So I like to set the failsafe delay to half a second. This is the delay that occurs between the receiver realizing its lost signal and driving everything to your failsafe programming. We come down here and out pin 1. That means socket labeled 1 on your receiver. What do you want it to do? And you set it for every individual socket, or servo if you like. And it starts off in hold mode. That would mean that if you went into failsafe, in this case after half a second, the receiver will command that servo to stay in the position it was in just before it went into failsafe. So if you were at full power, it would command it to hold full power. That's not good. You need it to come back to idle or off completely. In fact, in Britain, the law is that if your radio is capable of doing failsafe, and of course Jeti is, then you must, by law, set a failsafe on the throttle to idle or off in order to prevent the aircraft continuing to fly away up into messing about with the full-size traffic or getting up into the airways. That's all the CAA is concerned about. They don't care what you do with the rest of your controls, like the elevator and aileron, and you can't really legislate for a particular setting for those. So out pin 1 happens to be the throttle on this model, so we'll change that to failsafe. By the way, out off means it stops sending the servo a data signal. The servo would still have power, but without a data signal it doesn't know what to do. And so it'll just sit there not moving which sounds like hold, but you can move the servo mechanically. You can push it. So, airflow moving over the surface or engine vibrations, etc., could make it move. It won't try and hold the position specifically as it would in hold mode. We want failsafe, and as you can see to the right of it, all of a sudden a value, in other words the sort of travel value that it's going to go to and the speed at which it should go there, that's different to the delay. The delay is how long it waits before it starts implementing this programming. The speed would be the servo. You could make it move slowly into its failsafe position. And let's say you want your throttle to come to idle on failsafe. That's fine. Put your throttle stick to the idle position. Running a jet engine, you'd normally have the trim all the way forward, so put your trim there. Your ECU is showing it's the idle setting. That's lovely. Move out of this one. Set failsafe positions now. Look, the default value was 0. I'll set the failsafe positions, apply the changes, yes. And there we go, minus 50%. So that is what it would drive the servo or the ECU to in the event of failsafe. You might think, minus 50% is not very good, but that's because the trim is way forward. And obviously, once you're setting up a jet, you'll use a smaller trim. If you like, have a look at my video about setting up a one-step trim click for your jet engine ECU on and off. Okay, let's say you want the engine to go to just a normal shutdown. So my stick is back. I'll bring the trim back to the midpoint. And we'll say that this would be the setting that would normally command the ECU to shut down the engine. So you've taxied back in, you're quite happy, you're going to shut down. So we'll say, I'll use that same setting to shut the engine down. Lovely. Apply changes. Yes. And look now, the value minus 100%. So if your ECU was to go into, your radio went into failsafe during flight, and it implements this, it'll shut down the engine, which is what you wanted. But when you land, your ECU is going to give you a message, something like user shutdown or just shutdown, whatever. You may not be any the wiser. You're not going to know whether or not the radio went into failsafe. And let's say that you really want the failsafe to go to the value that the ECU will understand not only have I to shut down, but that this was a failsafe event. Well, you can do that. Come down here, click along. Well, if minus 100 was a normal shutdown, a good bit further than that would be something different. So we can click on that and send it all the way down to minus 125. Say OK to that. OK. Just pop back in, have a little look. And there we are. So now, if the radio goes into failsafe, not only will it shut down the engine, but the ECU would recognize, because that signal's way beyond a normal shutdown command, this was a failsafe event, and after the flight you can interrogate the ECU and you will see that it's shut down because the radio went into failsafe, and you won't waste time looking for other possible problems. Let's have a look what that means at the servo. In fact, I'll just show you another thing, what I'm going to do. If we back out of here, one click, once more, do you see this little symbol here? It's meant to be a sort of aerial transmitting its radio waves. This is very good. If we go into here, yes, it goes into wireless modes trainer, the symbol is still there. Press it again, we can disable transmission. This is great. We can test our failsafes without shutting down the transmitter. We're just going to stop the transmission. Say yes.
Signal lost. Signal lost.
Press the button again.
Signal lost.
And transmission comes back. Now, it's telling you signal lost because what's happened is it's not getting data back from the receiver. or it is getting data back from the receiver, and the receiver is telling it, well, I've got go signal. So that's what it's telling you there. So let's do that again. Go into there. Shall we disable transmission? Let's look at the servo. Here's the servo, the throttle servo. I'll put it to the normal run condition. Okay, so that's where your ECU is ready to run your engine. It'll start it. I'll bring it back to the setting I'm using for the normal shutdown. There's shutdown. Now, I'm going to disable transmission. Watch what happens. It moves further.
Signal lost. Signal lost.
I'll re-enable transmission.
Signal lost.
And it comes up there. So now you can set your gas turbine, jet engine failsafe to idle, or to shutdown, or to a failsafe shutdown.